Hi, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for this broadcast of Women in Security 2020. My name is Joe Uchill. I'm a senior reporter for SC Media. Both of the women joining me today are impressive in their own right. Camille has had high-ranking posts in the government and now at Google. Lauren leads the cyber project at Harvard's Belfer Center. I'm going to let you both introduce yourselves a little bit more thoroughly in a second. But what we're going to talk about today in bulk is an impressive thing that they've spearheaded this year. It's sometimes easy to mistake having good intentions with creating good outcomes. I would hazard to guess that most people in cybersecurity don't harvest ill will towards Black people, but the way that social networks have hardened in an industry that often relies on social relationships, we've created that bubble that a lot of Black people find themselves having trouble to pierce their way in. Share the Mic in Cyber, which Google first proposed on June 8th, was one of the more successful efforts to expose the cybersecurity to Black security leaders who current security celebrities already had deep respect for. It legitimately pierced that bubble. So I think a good place to start, and I think it's something that might come into play when we discuss why this succeeded, would be with you introducing yourselves and discussing a little bit of your background. Camille, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thank you for having us on today. I'm looking forward to talking about the campaign. So I'm Camille Stewart. I am a cybersecurity attorney. I currently am the head of security policy and election integrity for Android and Google Play at Google. I am also a fellow at the Cyber Project at the Harvard Belfer Center. I have a number of different hats that I wear. I'm on the board of directors for Girl Security, the board of directors for the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. I am a research fellow for New America, and I used to work at the Department of Homeland Security in the Obama administration as the senior advisor for cyber infrastructure and resilience policy, among a few other hats, big tech, small tech, research, kinds of things.
Lauren?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lauren Zabrick. I currently run the cyber project at the Belfer Center. My previous experience includes military service. So I was in the Air Force as an intelligence officer from, in the beginning of the 2000s. Switched, very briefly to consulting, and then at that point realized that I wanted to be back in the government. And so I joined the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency as an intelligence analyst, where I did counterterrorism and actually deployed 3 times to Afghanistan. Following that, moved to the Boston area and joined a cybersecurity startup called Recorded Future, and then went to the Harvard Kennedy School to earn my MPA, and then actually landed here at the Belfer Center.
I think a good way to start the story of Share the Mic in Cyber might be to talk about what things were like on June 7th, the day before this started, and what this is aiming to try to counteract. What was cybersecurity culture like before this started, and how does this work to change it?
I mean, I think your introduction captured it pretty well, right? It was an institution, a system that was built by white men, white and Asian men, and so therefore was, kind of a silo of perspectives and networks that some people had the pleasure of breaking into, but many others did not. And even if they were working in the space, they weren't climbing in the space in the same way. It wasn't necessarily intentional, but just like a function of how the ecosystem was built, right? That's the crux of systemic racism, is that it's not necessary that folks are trying to exclude people, but the way the system, the institution was built, it was only built with certain perspectives, certain experiences factored into how it moves, how it grows, how people enter and how people exit. And so cyber was a great example of that. We'd recognized writ large that there weren't enough women in the space, and even acknowledged that there wasn't enough diverse talent. But when we are clamoring for cybersecurity talent, and every sector needs more of it, but we've got Black professionals and other diverse professionals in cybersecurity already, or that might be interested in cybersecurity that aren't thriving. There's a problem there. There's a dissonance there. And so that was the space we were living in, right? A space that was opening up and wanted more talent, but there was this subsection of the population that just couldn't seem to find their footing. Yeah, I don't know if you have a different perspective, Lauren.
Sure. Yeah. So I think I'm relatively newer to cybersecurity. And so, having entered the field in early 2016. And so, my experience in witnessing these issues is more on the intelligence community side, really, the national security space. And that's not to say that cybersecurity is not in the national security space, if we want to edit that part out. But I just mean my previous experience was in the intelligence community, where a lot of these issues are very similar. And so coming into cybersecurity, having that experience, and really starting out, at the very beginning of my career there, I think, had I not been given the opportunity by my current boss, I don't think I would have, any sort of platform at this point. And so being in this particular position in May and June, I really started to think about, how I could do better, because I had always sort of looked at issues of security and equity from a gender lens, but not necessarily a racial lens. And, these events really just, really stopped me in my tracks. And I'm, sad to say that it, took me till, that point. But at that point I thought, I can definitely do better here. And so I was really thinking about ways that I could do better. And, I had written about it a little bit on LinkedIn, but I knew that I had to pair words with action. And so when this opportunity presented itself, that's when I sort of had that spark inside me, that this could be, an actual movement.
Talk a little bit about what Share the Mic in Cyber is, and how you've been able to, I guess, and why it works, why it's been able to have staying power where a lot of these kinds of initiatives don't tend to.
Yeah. I think because we let Share the Mic in Cyber be bigger than us, right? It is a movement that doesn't hold individuals back from adding to it, from expanding on it, from breathing life into it. We kind of just created a framework that allowed people to recognize that they as individuals have power to play a part in eradicating systemic racism, to create safe spaces for hard conversations, and to also put action around giving platforms and opportunity to Black cyber practitioners. So we created this movement that allowed them to do that, allowed the safe space on social media, but also pushed for action. Lauren used that word earlier. That is really the crux of this, right? We wanted this to catalyze action. So whether that was a sustained relationship between the two pairs or something bigger and broader, hopefully bigger and broader, that became very clear through the WISP scholarship. It came out of a pairing where they decided that we're not going to only talk about Najla's experience, but they were going to make this their engagement about finding scholarship money to bridge the gap so she could further her career. And then that became bigger, and it became scholarship money for all of the participants. And that lives on in the second round. And so just creating a space for people to ideate and make connections and ask questions about how they as individuals can engage in this in a really meaningful way in a moment where everybody was yearning for instruction and opportunity to play a part in changing what was going on in our nation, what is going on in our nation, what has been going on in our nation, in their space, in their realm of influence. And so I would categorize it as a movement that is centered on, day-long events on social media, on LinkedIn and Twitter. You follow the hashtag Share the Mic in Cyber, and you will learn about new and diverse voices.
I'll give a quick background, and then Camille, if you want to kind of do the, how it works sort of thing. We, I think, had both seen this campaign on Instagram called Share the Mic Now. And it was actually a campaign for the entertainment industry. So celebrities sharing their platforms, their Instagram platforms with, Black practitioners in that space. And so I remember seeing that on Instagram and thinking, wow, this could potentially work in cybersecurity or national security in general. And I had this thought, and I was on Twitter, and I saw Camille had written about that as well on Twitter. I was like, oh my gosh, this person who I had never met before, shares this idea. And so I quickly commented on her tweet, and we started our conversation from there.
Functionally, on the day of the campaign, everyone tweets so actually before the campaign, we pair practitioners and allies, and because this is a security industry and nobody is handing over their credentials, you send over your tweets, or you've had some kind of conversation where you decide how you're going to share the content beforehand. We didn't actually do any account exchanges. Well, actually, I did take over Susan Hennessy's account the first round. But other than that one exchange, we weren't promoting that because, cyber professionals. And so we facilitated this exchange of information, gave people some ideas. That goes back to the processes piece that Lauren was talking about. Give people tweet ideas, talk about your experience, talk about your work, talk about, what frustrates you, what you love about the field, et cetera. And the practitioners and allies came together and worked through that and added to it in some cases, or, expanded it. There were periscopes. As we mentioned, there was scholarship money raised. And so folks use the hashtag all day long. You're not going to put the tweets out all at once, but it's a day-long Twitter storm and LinkedIn storm for some around who you are, what you do in the industry. And it gives a Black cyber practitioner a new audience through this ally, and they are sharing about the work of this other person, in hopes that the folks that are following the ally will start to follow this other person, will learn about somebody who is doing great work in the space and make a new connection. A new panel invite will come from it, a board seat, which actually board seats have happened, new job opportunities, new technical exchanges, whatever, but just opening up people's networks so that they know that there are folks already participating, practicing, and talented in this space, and that they should add them to their networks.
What does it mean that for say Susan Hennessy to give you her I don't want to say voice, give you her
platform.
There's the word. Microphone. Why is it important for people who have the ability to reach large audiences to participate in this way?
Yeah, I mean, cyber uniquely, but really across industries, visibility and platform matter to your trajectory, to your credibility, and to providing opportunities for career growth, right? Folks who have high visibility on Twitter, particularly in cyber, are usually on some kind of executive track or have a lot of visibility and getting more clients if they consult, or, things like that. That kind of broadening of your network, the exposure of other practitioners to your perspectives on the work, to your humanity even, right? Like, people like to work with people that they get and they understand and think are human and nice. And these platforms provide an opportunity for you to get a glimpse at someone's personality as well as their work. And so that exchange opened up to a number of people who never would have either stumbled upon my page or who would have not encountered me in the course of work and then thought to follow me, to my voice, to my experiences, to learn about the work that I had and have been doing in the space. And, you know, I would venture to say there are a number of folks who, despite my work across sectors, had no exposure to me and now do.
I would say we heard from a number of people that, and Camille has expressed this too, a lot of people have talked about how, oh, we need to get more, Black people into the pipeline. And our practitioners are actually like, no, we're here. We're doing the work and nobody, can see that. And so that was one of the biggest things for me in seeing, how this really played out, is that the light was finally shining, upon these really talented, awesome practitioners and giving them that voice.
What does it mean? What should I take away from it that I met new people from this way? Literally, my job is to kind of lurk in the background and observe and meet people, and I just phrase that in the creepiest possible way. Like politely creep in the background, I guess would be the. What does it mean that? I assume I'm not alone. I hope I'm not alone. And what does it mean that going into something like this, I certainly personally did not feel like I was actively trying to avoid people of any ilk. What should I learn from finding out that I was actually avoiding people and that I was actually cutting off an entire segment of the population?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to recognize our own biases, right? Our networks are small, and many of us, find ourselves in these echo chambers. And I think this was an awakening. We were having a national awakening about it, but this was an awakening in cyber specifically to the point Lauren made about, right, people are already here. We don't just need to open up the pipeline. There are people here doing this work that are super talented, but also that we ourselves can be proactive about finding new perspectives and new voices in the space, right? There are so many people, Black, Brown, Asian, et cetera, that are practicing in cyber, that are expressing their opinions, that are writing, that are speaking, or aren't doing those things because they don't have the opportunity or don't think that they can, don't have the support, don't have the mentorship, don't have the line of sight to see that they can be that person in this space. And we each have a responsibility and opportunity to find a new voice and help them the way someone likely helped us get a platform, usher in a new opportunity, sit on a panel, et cetera. So I think this should be an awakening for everyone that, like, I should open myself up to that quiet intel analyst on the side, the quiet, incident responder on the side, who is kind of plugging away, and maybe they're junior, maybe they're not, and see if they want to do the panel, see how I can engage them, see how, there's a lot of individuality to opening this space up. And I think the biggest thing everybody should walk away from is you have a role in bringing new voices to the forefront.
What does it mean that two women spearheaded this movement? And what should we take away from that aspect of it? That it was two women who capitalized on an opportunity to create a better diversity movement.
So for me, again, it all comes down to, my experience in the space and again, applying more of a gender lens previously, and recognizing that, being able to provide these opportunities comes down to intentionality. And if people hadn't been intentional with, mentoring me or providing me those opportunities, I probably wouldn't be where I am right now. Given, despite all the work that I've done in my career. And so I think for me, to be able to kind of step back and recognize that and want to be able to turn around and give somebody else a hand up is important. And, I don't know if that's necessarily simply because I am a woman, but I think that, at least from my experience, because, I've been there, then I was able to recognize that and turn around to try to help other people.
Yeah, I think that shared experience of otherness makes you then want to help groups that are othered find their space, find their voice in this industry. I think when you felt that, you want to eradicate that for yourself and for others. And I think that's the crux of why two women came together to do it, right? We felt it in a myriad of different ways, and it should stop.
I believe the next Share the Mic and Cyber event is the 25th. Am I right?
23rd of October.
23rd, yeah. Good thing you corrected me. The 23rd. It's coming up. If I'm somebody with a platform, how do I get involved? And if I'm somebody without a platform, how can I help?
So we just closed the signups. So hopefully you already signed up, but there are still other ways to support, right? We are looking for supporting organizations and people that can amplify, get on Twitter, get on LinkedIn on October 23rd and share. Follow new voices, share the tweets that are being put out, engage with folks that are tweeting, expand your network. That's the first step. Bring other people in, expose other people to the Share the Mic and Cyber campaign, and then let that be the first step in other things. Invite them to your panel, invite them to your research group, and share job opportunities, start engaging. If you've got leverage at your organization and you would like to more formally support or have your organization amplify the tweets and amplify the program, engage that way. There are a lot of opportunities to kind of lift up the voices that are being shared on Share the Mic and Cyber Day. We've got organizations that are partnering up with us to give other programming to the practitioners, to the Black cyber practitioners. So if your organization wants to do a recruiting event or put on some kind of training or offer something, we're happy to facilitate that as well. We want this to be bigger than that moment. So there will be events running leading up to and following the actual day of the campaign, because organizations are engaging us to then engage the Black cyber practitioners. And then just as an individual, take it upon yourself to amplify the voices of others.
One of the things that's always interesting to me about it, beyond the human dignity aspects of diversity, especially within cybersecurity, a field where different statistics give different gaps, but there's going to be a workforce gap. Trying to fill it, looking at one half of the country, white males, 50% to 50% of the country is not the place where there are the most people to try to. It's just not a sustainable model of workforce to only include me. Is there how have efforts to fix that generally worked? I mean, is what we're doing, is what the industry does and the community does to try to combat that effective? And are there other things that we should be doing?
Honestly, I think a fear of tough conversations is limiting our progress, and our unwillingness, because of that fear, to actually name what the problems are. And I think that's the one thing that's happening more on the back end of the murders of, George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, et cetera, and this movement that's happening, right? We were always saying, these broad swaths, women of color, people of color, all of these things, and lumping people into these groups that don't actually really address the problem, because the systemic issues manifest differently for Indigenous people than they do for Black people, than they do for Asian people. And then when you intersect gender with that, they get worse or get better. You know, there are reasons why you should say Black women are experiencing cyber in these ways, white women are experiencing it in these ways, Indigenous women are experiencing it in these ways, Asian, you know, men are experiencing it in these ways, because there are differences. And to say all people of color are having this experience, or all women are having this experience, means that usually the most privileged of that demographic is the one that benefits from the help that's given. And so we don't actually address the problem in the ways that we thought we were trying to, right? A lot of these women's initiatives, while we should look at all women, but we should be able to identify the nuances of the need, is that mostly white women were benefiting from women's initiatives. And why was that? Because we ignored some of these other demographics. Or, you know, same thing in people of color circles. There were a lot of, especially in tech and in cyber, Asians that were benefiting in ways that some of the other demographics weren't. So those are tough things to say. It makes people uncomfortable to like call out groups and to really look at the intersectionality of people. But if we don't, we won't find solutions that actually suit the issues, suit the problems, and we won't make meaningful progress. It'll continue to be these outsized progressions of certain groups. And, you know, if we only address one demographic, even they won't rise as much as they have the potential to rise. And we won't innovate as much as we are supposed to or could innovate. And our strategies will be lacking, and our, you know, controls and security tools will be lacking. And so being able to have tough conversations as individuals, as organizations, as an industry is really important. And being able to name the problem we are trying to address in the moment is really, you know, important, which is why, you know, Share the Mic in Cyber is talking about this one group, because we're being, you know, intentional about where the issue we saw was coming from, what community was bleeding, and trying to address that. This should and can be replicated across communities, but this one is about that, because what we have to do is get past being afraid to talk about the nuances of the problem.
Thanks so much for talking to me about this, and I'd like to thank the audience for listening. There was a bunch of other women in security content on the site right now, including various awards, articles addressing everything from women in the technical aspects of cybersecurity to the venture capital aspects of cybersecurity, and a boatload of other videos. So I invite everyone to keep reading, watching, and experiencing what we have out there. And thanks again.